strings. So strings are very important uh, data type. So they're very good way of storing information. So for example, strings are essentially used to record text information, for example names, or anything which involves alphabets or special characters, etc. So those things have very important significance in Python, and in fact in data science industry. So we'll have a lot of information which will not be simply numbers. So we'll have to deal with text, we'll have to deal with some special symbols as well. So we can store those in strings. So strings in Python, they're essentially a sequence, which basically means Python keeps track of every element in the string as a sequence. So Python knows uh, how the sequence of string is arranged or it's defined. So for example, if you define a string sequence, so Python knows the first part of the string is S, and then the second part is E. So it knows which element is where based on the index. So we'll talk about that below. So the first thing is, once we know what kind of information we can store in a string, so how do we actually create a string? So it's very easy. So basically, if you want to define a string variable, you need to provide the name, the value within either single quotes or double quotes. So for example, learning here, so I've mentioned single quotes here. So it's a string. So I can store this variable. So my first string, so let's say I'm storing this variable, storing this value, learning, which is a text value, it's a string. So my string variable has the name my first string. Now I can simply write my first string and will give me learning. So it's very easy to define string in Python. So even not only particular word, you can define entire sentences in Python. So for example, statistics sits at the heart of machine learning. So you can specify this in single quotes, and this will be a string for you. So statistics sits at the heart of machine learning. Then we can also use double quotes as well to define strings, as I mentioned above. So in this variable my string, you can define string as a sentence within double quotes. So this sentence string built with double quotes, this also defines a string. So you can define strings in Python in either two ways, either use single quotes or double quotes. So but we have to be slightly careful with them, because there is a slight difference in a single quote and double quote. So for example, let's say you try to specify a string which is I am using single quotes, but this will create an error within single quotes. So this is a sentence and you're trying to specify this within a single quotes. So but this will not work, because here Python encounters the first quote and then it stops. So this is not a valid way to go. So the better way is essentially what you should do. So here also we have an apostrophe. So basically you define a sentence and then put it under double quotes. So you have double quotes here at the beginning, at the end. Okay. So that is the way to define to remove any such conflict. So for example, if a sentence has one single quote, so try to specify them with using double quotes. So that should work totally. So uh, you now know how to define a string in Python. So you basically use double quotes or single quotes. Be careful with the usage of double quotes and single quotes. This example should be very really helpful for you in case you are having any issues in defining a string variable. One important thing which you should know in Jupyter, so whenever you want to run a cell, so simply you should do shift enter. So for example, if you write a is equal to 3 and then you write a, so for example, I specify a is equal to deep learning and then I write a, so I'll do shift enter. So do shift enter to run a particular cell. This will run for you. So that's how you'll print it. So later we'll go through what are the uh, applications and what are the utilities of this Jupyter environment. So there are a lot of other options like file, edit, view. So we'll discuss this in detail so that it becomes easier for you to code later. So now there's one tricky thing. So here we define deep learning. a string. I have not stored in this in a variable, so it's a standalone string. I have not assigned any variable with the string value, so this is an independent string. Okay. Now what I do, I define two strings: linear algebra, then one the other is calculus. So when I do shift enter, so when I try to run this, so it only returns me calculus, but it does not return me linear algebra. So why is that? So as I mentioned you earlier, so there's a utility, the utility of print statement comes here. So what you can simply do, you can specify your string within this print function, within the parenthesis, and calculus as well. So you can print all these things in this way. So you have linear calculus, then you have linear algebra, then you have calculus. Then you can use slash n to print a new line as well. So here when I do slash n, so it gives me a new line. So for example, if I insert slash n here, so see what I mean. So essentially, yeah, you can do slash n. There's some issue with the keystroke here, so it's not happening. But you need to specify slash n if you want to go to a new line here in print statement. So this is the utility of print statement. So if you want to, let's say, print two variables, so you should not only write the string value, but also put them within the print statement, so you can see the output as is shown here. So now let's play with strings as well, a little more. So so as I told you earlier, so string is essentially it takes into account the sequence. So for example, regression. So string knows, so any string, any variable name in which we store this string. So for example, let's say algo. So in algo I specify regression here. So this algo variable contains the value string which is regression. So Python knows that r comes in the first, then e, then g, then r. So when I call this function len, which gives me the length of the string, so the length is 10. So as you can see here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 characters here in the string. So the length of the string is 10. So if I include space, so it will give me 11. So including space, so the string has space. So the length of the string will be 11. So based on how whatever number of spaces are there, the length of the string will change. So this is a very useful function which we'll be using more often in our later sessions. So to find the length of a string, you simply call the length function. Now there are a lot of other operations on functions on strings. We'll cover them in later when we talk about strings in detail. So uh, there are upper and lower functions which can convert a string to uppercase or lowercase. So those kind of things we'll be dealing later. So today let's talk more about string indexing. So as you are familiar that string contains a sequence of objects, a sequence of characters, for example. So for example, this string, which is principal component analysis followed by an exclamation mark. So p is the first letter, then it also has spaces, it has small caps, small alphabets, big alphabets. So this is our string here. Now, what do you mean by indexing? So indexing is essentially specifying the position of a particular character in your string. So we can locate where this L is in this string. We can calculate where is T is in this string. So those kind of things are included in what we call indexing. So essentially, in what Python, so in Python, the first character is given an index 0. So in Python, indexing starts from 0 and then it goes above that. So it's 0, then r is at index 1, then I is at index 2, then n is at index 3, and so on and so forth. So when you print this string object, it gives you principal component analysis. So how do we find the particular character or take the subset of this string using the indexing method? So what do you do? So you have this variable which contains this value principal component string, principal component analysis, and then in this variable, you provide the square brackets and then specify the element which you want to then specify the index of the element which you want to extract. So for example, let's say you want to extract the element which is at the first index, so you specify 0, so it gives you p. So I have not defined string here, so that's why the error came. So it's p. So if I define 1, so it should give me r, because the indexing in Python starts from 0, so 0 1. So my first index will should be r, so it's r. Okay. And in that way we can extract different elements based on the index. So I want to extract, let's say, the element at the index number 15, which is your 16th character, because the indexing starts from 0, so it is my 16th character. So if you simply just count it out, so PRINCIPAL, so this is essentially, this is 9, then space 10, then you have 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So my string, so my element with this index number 15 is the 16th character of my string. So that's why n is coming out to be here when I do string 15. So it's very easy to follow, it's not that difficult. So just remember that indexing in Python starts with 0, it does not start with 1. So the first character will have index 0. So that is the important takeaway from this indexing thing. And then later what we can show is that in string you can extract a substring as well. So for example, let's say I wanted to extract uh, for example, I wanted to extract this particular substring, so rinciple. So what I should do, I should provide index 1, and then the colon comes in very handy here. So what it does, it is essentially it's telling this Python to perform slicing up till a designated point. So for example, I have specified here, take all the characters of the string which are in the index 1 1 to 9. So from index 1 to 9, so that means your second character, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth. So I specified here till 9, which means the 10th character, right? So but here I only got till L, I did not get the space here. So why is that? So the right the designated point, it is not inclusive in the indexing method. So this is a very important thing which you should know. So so the rightmost point after colon is not included. So when you specify 9, so let's say I specify 10, so I should get a space here. So I am getting a space here as well. So the element with index 10 is the 11th character, but it's not included. So when I do the substring using the colon, so you specify the starting index, you specify the ending index, but that will not be included. So so these are the conventions in Python for extracting substrings from a larger string. So that's the way it works. Now let's say if I want to extract up to, let's say, the third index, so I specify 3, so I can get up till third index, because this index value with 3 is the fourth character, but since this is not included, so I'll get the 0th index character, first indexed character, and the second indexed character, which means essentially I'll be getting 3 characters. Okay. So it's not very difficult to follow, it's very easy. So the indexing starts with 0, and the rightmost thing is not included in your so it's not the index which Python will print out. Okay. So it's not included. Now let's say if we want to print everything, so we can simply do string, or we can also simply uh, put colon. So we do not provide a starting point, neither the ending point. That tells Python to extract the whole string. So based on that, you can do you can find substrings here. So I am printing everything here, so string, and so both will give me the same thing. So I need to do print here, as I told you earlier. So I need to do print, because earlier, uh, without print statement, you will only get the last uh, variable which you want to print. So here now I'm getting both of them. So either you can simply do string, or simply use the square brackets and the colon in between without specifying the end point and the starting point. Okay. Now there's a very useful concept as well. We can also use negative indexing to go backwards. So for example, -1 tells me just go and pick the last character of my string. So remember, our string is principal component analysis, and the last string value character is exclamation. So extract that, simply do -1. So that will tell the Python to extract the last element of that string. So string -1 will give you exclamation mark. Now, uh, what more things we can do in Python with strings as well. So what you can do, so you can do something like double colon and specify 1. So 1 will be your step size, and what it will do, it will very clear. So when you do this, it returns you the original string. So it's not clear here. So now let's move to the inline 30 here. So when you do double colon 2, with the double colon, what do we have? So in double colon, you can simply specify the size in which you want to go ahead and grab. So what we do, so in principal component analysis, I have the first element, I go two elements next. So so I go to uh, I, and then I go to C, and then I jump to P, then I jump to L. So as you can see here, so that's occurring in steps. So basically it's when I specifying two, it's asking me to uh, print, take the first character, and then pick all the alternate characters which comes in the sequence. So it picks P, then I, then picks C, P, then L, then you have C. See, we moved across the space here. Otherwise, if you do 3, it should count. So see, here we are seeing space because P is the first character, and then we move 3. So we move to N, then we move to 2. Means we basically look over the two characters, move to the third one, and then we look over the two characters and move to the third, which is the space. As you can see, that is the space here, and similarly, and so on and so forth. So the role of a single colon is to help you extract a substring where you can specify the starting element and the ending starting index and the ending index, which will not be included. So you should be careful of that. And the double colon will help you extract a string where you can go ahead in a particular step size where you can define here in your step size, and then grab. So basically, first character, skip two skip two letters, two characters, pick the third one, then skip two letters, pick the third one, and move ahead until you run out of your string. So string 4 here will give me a different thing. So P, skip out first three characters, and then move, pick the fourth character C. So which you can see here, PC, and then skip the first three character, pick the fourth character L, which is L. So these are the basic nuances. So please don't think that it's very difficult to follow. We'll be sharing with you the notebooks. You can play around with them, so you can become very conversant with these string indexing methods. And because we'll be using these a lot, so when we move further in our course, so when we do go ahead manipulate our data frames, we create new variables. So the lot of text processing as well we'll be doing. So there these things will come in really handy. So please be aware that you should understand these concepts, and then we'll be applying these concepts later on. So again, you can uh, simply print a string backwards just by doing -1 followed by two colons. So that's a basic thing. So now let's move to the string properties. So can we change a particular character of a string? So for example, string 0 gives me the first character of a string. Okay. So I'll print what string 0 is. Now what I try to do, I try to assign this particular character I'm trying to replace the first character with character X. Will I be able to do that? No. So this is not allowed in Python. So why is that? So the error tells us that the str object does not support item assignment. So we need to change the item assignment. So what we can do instead? We can concatenate the strings. So for example, you have string, which is your principal component analysis. Then you can simply do plus as we were doing for numbers. So also you can use plus operators when you want to concatenate two strings. So for example, let's say I have string one. So string one is, let's say, ABC. Then I have string two is equal to DEF. Now I want to see what is string one plus string two. Now let's not focus on this. So it gives me A B C D E F. Now you can simply, what you can do as well. So you specify plus, and then you can also specify a space, which is a string only. So we'll get a space here as well. So in this way you can concatenate strings.